Hello everybody, this is Ian here, and welcome back to another Doctor Who video. Or, series, rather. Now this is something I've been wanting to do for quite some time, a ranking of the missing stories, specifically in the order from those I want recovered the least to those I want recovered the most. This will probably end up being a 5-part series, with each episode comprising roughly 5 episodes. Today we're looking at the bottom of the pack, 26 to 21, the missing serials I desire to be recovered the least. Now, this is not saying I do not want them to be recovered. Naturally, I want every missing story to be completed, but the degree to which I want them completed varies. Now, this list also does not reflect necessarily the quality of episodes and the degree to which I enjoy them, although there probably is a general trend in that direction. Also, remember that these rankings are just my own opinion. I am not putting my views across as fact, and you shouldn't feel compelled to change your own views based on what I say. Also, keep in mind that I will probably be more negative on these lower ranked stories than they necessarily deserve, not because I hate them. I don't hate any of the serials on this list, and I hate very few Doctor Who serials, period. But because I need to explain these stories' low rankings, that means focusing more on the negatives. Anyway, without further ado, we reach number 26. The missing serial I want recovered the least, and perhaps the only one that I would be truly disappointed to see recovered. Not saying I don't want it recovered. What I'm saying is that if it were recovered, I would be disappointed, not because the story was recovered, but because of all the serials that could have potentially been recovered, it was the one that ultimately was. And that story is The Reign of Terror, the final serial of Season 1. The Reign of Terror is a 6-episode story featuring the first Doctor, Ian, Barbara, and Susan, and of those 6 episodes, 4 and 5 are missing. So, what is it about The Reign of Terror that nets it last place in my rankings? It's boring. It's so boring. The entire serial is just 6 episodes of padding and pointless subplots that add virtually nothing to the overarching story. Add to this the fact that we already have over half of the serial, and so can fairly accurately visualize what the rest of the story might have looked like. Also, the 2 missing episodes are comprised almost entirely of people standing around talking to each other, with only the barest sprinklings of action, and dialogue-heavy stories generally work the best as reconstruction, so basically what you've got with The Reign of Terror is a mostly intact, low-quality serial, which works perfectly well as a reconstruction. And you've got the reasons Reign of Terror is so low. It's boring, largely uninspired direction. The companions featured are the 3 best represented companions of the entire 1960s era, each with over 80% of their episodes surviving. If this serial were to be completed, then there would be no reevaluation, no legendary scenes recovered, and no real impact on the Doctor Who community as a whole. And for these reasons, it is the serial that I want recovered the least. Number 25. The Ice Warriors, a Season 5 story featuring the second Doctor, Jamie and Victoria. Like The Reign of Terror, it's 6 episodes long and is missing 2 of its 6 episodes, in this case episodes 2 and 3. Unlike The Reign of Terror, though, The Ice Warriors isn't down here because it's necessarily bad. I wouldn't call it a top-tier story, it's not, but it is a fairly solid serial, probably hovering somewhere in the middle or upper middle of classic series rankings. There are 2 main reasons for the Ice Warriors' low ranking here. First is a factor I mentioned in The Reign of Terror, that we have a majority of this story's episodes, and so can fairly effectively visualize the missing 2. The other primary reason for the serial's low ranking is simply the fact that the 2 missing episodes have been animated, and, here's the key, that the animation is pretty good. This is why Reign of Terror, I didn't mention it being animated, because the animation on Reign of Terror is just really creepy. Yeah, but with the Ice Warriors, the animation I think is really good. It's simplistic, looks like it was made in Adobe Flash or something like that, and I know that this animation is not generally that popular among most people, but I think it does an excellent job telling the story. The movement is good, and the character models are distinct enough that I do not have trouble telling characters apart as I do in, say, the Invasion animation. I just think that the animation for the Ice Warriors does an excellent job telling the story and is a great representation of the 2 missing episodes. So overall, the Ice Warriors is number 5 because most of the story is intact. I can effectively visualize the missing episodes based on what we have, and the animation on the episode is already very good. When I make a list of missing stories, the Ice Warriors is the one I always forget is incomplete. Number 24, The Moonbase. Similar to the Ice Warriors, the Moonbase isn't down here based on quality. In fact, I love this story. It's so much fun, and it's one I'm always glad to sit down and rewatch. If I like it so much, then why is it so low, you ask? Well, the Moonbase has something that most other serials do not have. A really, really good animation of the missing episodes. The work on this one is incredible, and I think it is by far and away the best animation to date. The models are excellent, the movement is excellent, just everything about it is excellent. It's so good that I really don't think the film prints themselves could improve on it that much. The only scene that I think could have been executed much better in the animation is the one part in episode 3 where the Cybermen chases Benoit across the moon, but other than that, it's pretty much perfect. Of course, I'd rather have the actual episodes, but this is one of the only missing stories that I really wouldn't mind remaining unrecovered. It also helps that we have half of the episodes of the serial, and that really helps to visualize the story. So yeah, the Moonbase is low on this list, not because I don't like it, but because what we do have is so good. I don't feel as if I need the actual prints to enjoy the missing episodes and thus the serial to its fullest extent. In fact, in some ways, I think the animated episodes 1 and 3 are actually superior to the extant episodes 2 and 4. Although I suppose if the serial were recovered, I'd finally be able to learn the name of number 17, the base member that appears only in this one telesnap. Number 23, the Smugglers. Similar to the Reign of Terror, I would be somewhat disappointed if the Smugglers were recovered and no other missing stories were. Even with the Ice Warriors and the Moonbase, I'd have some excitement because the serials themselves are actually pretty good. The Smugglers, on the other hand, is just a tedious watch. It's not even that it's that padded. The story itself is just entirely unengaging and entirely formulaic. It's fairly obvious that interest in the historical genre had long since disappeared, and what is left in The Smugglers is a throwaway story where nothing of any real significance happens. Additionally, we have virtually every action scene from the first 3 episodes in the form of censor clips, so the only things lost are dialogue scenes, which I've already said generally work fine as reconstructions, although we will get to exceptions to this rule later in the rankings. Not today, not this episode, later episodes. But episode 4 of The Smugglers is the only part of this story that I think would seriously benefit from being recovered, given that the entire episode is basically one giant battle. Otherwise, though, I see little value in the content of the serial, and I seriously doubt that any major reevaluation would occur if this story were recovered. At least the actors seem to care about the story, even if the producers obviously didn't. So, overall, The Smugglers is a formulaic and unengaging tale that only gets pushed up to 23rd because it is entirely missing, so it is impossible to visualize, and because it features Polly and Ben, the least represented 1960s companions, barring Katarina and Sarah Kingdom. Number 22, The 10th Planet, William Hartnell's final story. What we have here is one of the most sought-after missing episodes of all time, The 10th Planet Episode 4, and I can understand why this is the case, but I can't see it as the Holy Grail myself. Yes, it is William Hartnell's final story as the Doctor, but it is far from his best. He gives much better performances in both The Smugglers and The War Machines before that, and we have the actual regeneration sequence, which is by far the most important aspect of the missing episode. The story itself is good, not great, so I don't see it as some great classic that absolutely must be completed. Just overall, I don't feel the hype on this one. We have 3 of the 4 episodes, and that fact allows us to effectively visualize the missing one using the context of the other 3. There is an animation, and while I was somewhat underwhelmed by it, it's passable. The 10th Planet is ranked here largely because we have 3 of the 4 episodes, the story itself isn't my favorite, and we have the most important scene of the missing episode. Number 21, The Underwater Menace. Now, I don't want to go too in detail on The Underwater Menace quality-wise, as I actually want to do a full review of this story, but to keep it brief, it is just a very boring story despite occasional moments of amazing. We have 2 of the 4 episodes, and those 4 are probably the strongest of the serial, which admittedly isn't saying much, but they're still the strongest. But, despite having half of the episodes of the story, I find the missing episodes hard to visualize, which I think has something to do with the fact that the story's tone and execution shift wildly between episodes, whereas episodes that are easier to visualize, such as The 10th Planet, generally have consistent tone throughout. In The Underwater Menace, I find it extremely difficult to pinpoint exactly what the feel of the story is because it keeps changing, making visualization of the missing episodes hard. And that's really one of the only things the story has going for it in the rankings. The only other boost it has is its absolute corniness, because even though the serial itself falls short of being so bad that it's good, the moments it does have are legendary. From the celery hat, the executioner's costume, Patrick Troughton's pirate, hobo, gypsy person, to just Professor Zaroff in general. And this is to the degree that I think the value outweighs the tediums that is the rest of the serial. The potential for more moments like these is the only reason the Underwater Menace makes it this high on the list. Even though the missing episodes are hard to visualize, the story outside of these moments is just so weak and boring and bland and nonsensical. It's just, without the so bad it's good elements, the Underwater Menace would probably have gotten 25th place, ahead of only Reign of Terror. But then again, if the serial had more corny moments and had managed to graduate to B-movie glory, it might have gotten much higher on the rankings as someone who absolutely loves bad movies. As it stands, though, the Underwater Menace gets 21st place because even though it's hard to visualize the missing episodes and there is potential for more Professor Zaroff in those missing episodes, the story itself is incredibly weak and boring, and I'm just incredibly apathetic to its missing status as a whole. There is nothing really lost in the Underwater Menaces being lost. Except Professor Zaroff. So that's part 1 of my missing episode ranking. I hope you all enjoyed. Thanks for watching, and let me know about your own opinions in the comments below. I'll see you next time.